Hey everyone, welcome to the Hobby Grotto. Today we're painting a Fallout Vault Dweller. The first thing I'm doing here is an overbrush of Rhinox hide over the whole model, and this is just something I like to do on minis with lots of brown bits like belts and straps. It saves time, and dark brown is a good base anyway for lots of colours. With the first base coat down, I'm now going to be painting all the metallic bits, and I'm using a 50-50 mix of brown and silver to give the metal that old grungy effect that's going to be appropriate for a post-apocalyptic world. Rhinox hide is the perfect dark brown for this, and I like Iron Warriors because it's a nice dark silver, but most silvers would work for this when mixed with brown because it's going to darken up the overall colour anyway. To finish off all these metallics, I'm giving them all a dry brush of lighter silver, in this case Ironbreaker, and this will just save us some time later too, because once these areas have been washed, they'll pretty much be all done. Giving metal parts a dry brush then wash is the perfect way to deal with them, I reckon, just fast and simple, and let those shiny pigments do the work. Time for the most iconic part of any Vault Dweller, the Vault Suit. There are a variety of blues that would work for this, and if you look at different images of Vault Suits online, you'll find a range of different colour interpretations. I'm using Calidor Sky as my main colour here, but I'm actually basing with a mix of Calidor and Cantor Blue. This is purely optional, as you can certainly just base coat with Calidor Sky, but I like to mix the darker blue in because it will just help establish some more shading on the miniature, which is always good. Fallout is one of my favourite video game series of all time. I love it so much, so I've been keen to paint up these miniatures I have from the Fantasy Flight board game for ages, but remember, this mini is just an example. The colour scheme I'm showing you today will work for any Vault Dwellers you may be painting. For larger areas of yellow, I like to base coat with XV88, but because these areas are quite small, I'm just going straight to the Avalon Sunset here. And you can do this with Avalon Sunset because for a yellow paint, it has excellent coverage, probably one of the best yellows out there, and also really good for capturing that more mustard yellow that's featured on the Vault Suits. Like the blue, Vault Suits have a lot of different interpretations for the colours, yellow and blue, so you can kind of do this yellow in your own style if you want. I just think that more kind of Avalon Sunset mustardy yellow is a good one here. Time for some quick flesh tone. You can paint this skin any colour, of course. I've got a tutorial on different skin tones you can check out if you're looking for some ideas. I'm just keeping it simple here with the classic Cadian flesh tone, and I always like to make sure flesh paints are nice and thin on the wet palette so they don't clog up any detail. We can't very well forget one of the most iconic Fallout items of all time here, the Pip-Boy. A little bit of Sybarite green on the screen will work wonders. This colour has some blue to it as well as green, so it's going to be perfect for this. Shading time, I've got the Nuln Oil out here of course, but a brown wash would also work nicely with all these colours. Whatever wash you choose to use, make sure it isn't pooling too much in any areas. You can apply wash more sparingly than I am and just kind of specifically add it into all the cracks and crevices, but I just find this quicker and easier. Now that the wash is all dry, the first thing I'm going to do are the eyes, and you certainly don't have to paint eyes on minis, and I don't all the time myself, but when I do, I like to paint them before the face. That way, if I make any mistakes, I can fix them up and readjust the eyes without messing up any of the face highlights. And now I'm doing exactly that, coming back with the Cadian flesh tone and just fixing up any areas where paint splashed out with the eyes. For now, I'm just going to paint this layer, and I'm going to come back later and do the final highlights on the face. This stage is just about evening up that base coat after the wash and tidying up the eye areas as I mentioned previously. The first layer on the Vault Suit is pure Calidor Sky, and this will help reinforce the shading we built with the wash and slightly darker base coat. I like to keep these layers nice and thin and just work with the model to see where they need to be applied. You don't want to completely obscure all the shading that's already there, but we're also building a consistent layer for the highlights to work off. This is the main shade of blue we're using, so we want good coverage of all the relevant areas. When it comes to highlights, the easiest way is just to add a little bit of white to your blue. I'm using Calgar blue here, which I like for this because it's got some grey to it, and I think that kind of tone works best for the Vault Suit blue. It will desaturate the bold Calidor Sky a little, but not too much. The first pass is of course a 50-50 mix of Calgar blue and Calidor Sky to get a nicer blend between the layers. but after that I'm coming back and adding some pure highlights with Calgar Blue. And I should also mention, whenever I'm mixing colors like this, 50-50 isn't the exact amount of paint in the equation. It just means a balance between the two colors visually. So you can eyeball the mixes. In the case of the blues, for example, it's visually halfway between Calidor Sky and Calgar Blue. It doesn't have to be a perfect mix. These are just layers to blend between the colors. Of course, no Vault suit is complete without the bold yellow. The first pass here is regular Avalon Sunset, just like we already used for the base coat to just restore any consistency loss with the wash. And then it's just a matter of adding a little white to the yellow to mix up some highlights. For larger areas of yellow, you can use a transition color like Eero Yellow before going to almost white highlights, but for such a tiny area like this, let's not get too carried away. These straps and other doodads will all get another coat of Rhinox hide, and then to add variety, I'm going to mix some highlights with Ushabti Bone and some other highlights with XV88. This will give us two different browns and is a super easy way to add more visual variety to these areas, which can often be a little dull. I mean, they're just straps, people, but it's nice to give them some highlights. Finally, I'm coming back and adding some highlights to the face with Kislev Flesh. This level of highlighting on the face is optional, of course, but if you have the time, it can be nice to do a little bit more detail on the faces of miniatures, as they are the focal points generally. And I want these minis to look nice because I'm trying to get my friends into the game here. And there we have a Vault Dweller ready to explore the wastes, looking for a water chip, no doubt. Thanks for watching, everyone. Why don't you check out some of these other videos, and we'll see you next time on the Hobby Grotto.